When God is about to give you something big, one of the first signs you might notice is that you are led into a season of silence and solitude. This can be a time when you feel isolated, cut off from the world, and perhaps even distant from God. Or you may find yourself in a place where the voices around you have quieted down, where there seems to be no clear direction or answer to your prayers. It's the chief. It's a season that can feel overwhelming, even disheartening. But let me assure you, this silence, the silence, is not a sign that God has forgotten you, that He is absent from your life. Rather, it's a sign that He is preparing you for something greater than you could ever imagine. Which the chief, consider the example out Scripture where God used times of silence to shake the lives of His people. One of the most notable examples is the story of Elijah. Elijah, a great prophet of God, found himself running for his life. Fleeing from the threats of Queen Jezebel, he retreated to a cave in the wilderness, feeling alone and abandoned, wondering if his mission had been in vain. God could have spoken to him in the midst of his fear, anxiety, or frustration. Instead, God chose to speak to him in a whisper after a mighty wind, an earthquake, and a fire had passed by. In the silence, Elijah heard the still, small voice of God, and it was in that moment that God revealed His plan and gave Elijah new instructions. This pattern holds true in our own lives as well. When we are in the midst of a waiting season, when we feel as though the heavens are silent and our prayers are unanswered, God is not distant. He is preparing our hearts for what lies ahead. This season of silence can be challenging because it forces us to stop striving to seize our efforts to control every aspect of our lives. It requires us to trust that God's timing is perfect even when we cannot see the full picture. We may not feel the immediate presence of God in the ways we expect, but this is often where the most profound growth happens. In these moments of solitude, God allows us to reflect on our hearts and our true dependence on Him. We often find ourselves questioning the direction of our lives, wondering why things are not unfolding as we had hoped. We may even begin to doubt our own ability to hear from God. But silence has a unique way of clearing our minds and our hearts. It strips away the noise and the distractions and the business of life. In that space, we are more able to hear the whispers of God's voice, and those the chief, and it is in those whispers that He imparts the wisdom, guidance, and strength we need for the next phase of our journey. The season of silence can also serve as a time of refinement. Just as precious metals must go through fire to be purified, so must we go through periods of stillness to be refined. God uses this time to remove the impurities, the distractions, and the excess baggage that may hinder our growth. This time can be uncomfortable, and at times it may feel like we are in a desert with no end in sight. But the silence is not purposeless. It is a part of God's loving and intentional preparation for what is to come. During this time, God may also be planting seeds in our hearts, seeds of faith, trust, patience, and perseverance. We may not see the fruits of those seeds immediately, but in His perfect timing, they will bloom into something beautiful. These seeds are a part of His greater plan for us, and although we may not understand them fully in the moment, we will one day look back and realize how essential that time of solitude was for our spiritual growth. Another aspect of this season of silence is that it draws us closer to God. When we find ourselves in a place where there are no distractions, no voices telling us what to do, we are left with only one option: to rely on God. It is in the silence that we are given the space to truly encounter Him, to seek His face, and to listen to His heart. The absence of other voices forces us to tune our ears to the sound of His voice, and as we do, we begin to hear Him more clearly. This deepening relationship with God is one of the greatest blessings of the silent seasons of life. We must also recognize that silence doesn't mean inactivity. It's easy to mistake silence for stagnation, but nothing could be further from the truth. In the silence, God is at work in ways we cannot see. Just because we cannot perceive what God is doing doesn't mean He is not moving on our behalf. Sometimes God works behind the scenes, preparing the way for the breakthrough that is about to come. We may feel as though nothing is happening, but rest assured, God is orchestrating His perfect plan for us. Just as a seed takes time to grow in the soil, so too does the work that God is doing in our hearts. In the end, The season of silence and solitude is not a place of abandonment. It is a sacred space where God molds and shapes us. It is in this silence that He strengthens our faith, refines our character, and prepares us for the blessings and breakthroughs that are yet to come. We may not understand why we are in this season, but we can trust that God's purposes are always for our good, and He is using every moment of silence to prepare us for something greater. So, instead of running from the silence, we are called to embrace it, to wait with expectant hearts, knowing that God is at work, even when we cannot hear Him speaking. When God is about to give you something big, one of the clearest signs you will experience is the opening of doors that previously seemed impossible. These doors could be opportunities, breakthroughs, or relationships that you never thought would be possible, yet in God's perfect timing, they begin to open in ways you least expected. It is important to recognize that these open doors are not just a coincidence or a result of your own efforts, but are a divine intervention, orchestrated by the hand of God. In our daily lives, we often come up against obstacles that seem insurmountable. We face situations where the doors to our dreams, goals, or desires seem firmly shut. Perhaps you've been trying to get a job, start a business, or make a significant change in your life, but every effort you make feels like you're hitting a brick wall. It was the chiefs at these times that we may feel like giving up, questioning whether we'll ever get the breakthrough we're hoping for. But when God is about to give you something big, He will begin to open doors that you thought were impossible to open. And when He does, you will know as the chief, you will know that it's His doing. Consider the story of the Apostle Paul, who was on a missionary journey, attempting to enter certain regions to spread the gospel. At one point, he was stopped by the Holy Spirit from going into Asia, and for a time, it seemed as though the doors were closed to him. But then, in the middle of his uncertainty, God opened the door for him to enter Macedonia. It was in Macedonia that Paul experienced one of the most powerful moves of God's Spirit, resulting in the salvation of a whole household and the establishment of a church in Philippi. Had Paul not obeyed the silence in that season, he would have missed the opportunity that God had prepared for him. What seemed like a closed door was actually God's direction. Leading was the chief, leading him to something far greater than he could have imagined. This is a key truth we must understand. When God opens a door, it's not just any door. It is a door that no man can shut. It's a door that is perfectly aligned with His will and His purpose for our lives. Often, these doors come at the most unexpected times and in the most unlikely circumstances. Sometimes we may even feel unworthy of the opportunity, or we may struggle with self-doubt, wondering if we're truly ready for the open door in front of us. But remember, when God opens a door, He also equips us to walk through it. Think about the story of Joseph, a man who experienced one of the most dramatic shifts in life that only God could have orchestrated. Joseph went from being sold into slavery by his brothers to becoming the second in command in all of Egypt. The door that God opened for Joseph seemed impossible, given his circumstances. He was a young, imprisoned man, far removed from any position of power or influence. But in God's timing, the door opened through Pharaoh's dreams, and Joseph was able to interpret them. This interpretation led to Joseph's promotion and eventually saved many lives, including the lives of his own family. Joseph's experience teaches us that God opens doors at the right moment, was even when our present circumstances seem to point to the opposite outcome. When God opens these doors, it's essential to remember that they are not only doors of opportunity, but also doors of responsibility. They may lead to greater positions, greater influence, or greater challenges. It is easy to focus on the excitement of the opportunity, but we must not forget that with open doors come new responsibilities. The doors God opens for us will often require us to step into new levels of faith, trust, and obedience. When He opens a door, He is not just giving us a chance to receive something big. He is entrusting us with a new role in His kingdom, one that will require our best effort and commitment. These open doors might not always lead to immediate success or instant rewards. Sometimes the door opens and we must walk through it with faith, trusting that God will guide us every step of the way. Just as the Israelites had to walk through the Red Sea, trusting that God would part the waters, we too must trust God when He opens doors that seem overwhelming or daunting. There will be moments when the path seems unclear, but God is faithful to guide us through the open doors, even if we cannot see the full picture. It is also important to note that when God opens a door, He often does so in a way that only He can receive the glory. The opportunities that He gives us will be beyond our own ability to achieve or create. There will be no mistaking that it is God who has opened the door. This reminds us that our success is not of our own making, but a testament to the goodness and grace of God. He opens doors that show the world His power and His provision. In some cases, God's open doors will come with a clear invitation to move forward into a new chapter of life. But there will also be times when He opens doors for us to step into places where we can be a blessing to others. These opportunities might involve leadership service or acts of kindness that extend beyond our comfort zones. Ope was the chief. Opening these doors is not just about advancing our own lives, it's about advancing God's kingdom on earth. When He opens a door for you, it's often a chance to be a part of something much larger than yourself, a greater mission and a higher calling. As you wait for God to open doors in your life, hold on to the truth that His timing is perfect. The doors He opens for you may not happen according to your schedule, but they will be right on time. You might feel like you're standing at a closed door, wondering when the opportunity will come, but keep praying, keep seeking, and keep trusting. In His time, God will open the door, and when He does, it will be undeniable that it's the door He had prepared for you all along. When God opens a door, it's not just an opportunity. It's a divine invitation to step into something new, something that only He could have orchestrated. When God is about to give you something big, one of the most significant signs that you will experience is a renewed sense of purpose and clarity in your life. For many of us, there are times when we feel lost, unsure of our direction, or uncertain about the next steps we should take. We might feel like we are wandering without a clear sense of purpose or understanding of why things are happening the way they are. In these moments of confusion, it may seem like we are just going through the motions, unsure of what God is doing or where He is leading us. But when God is preparing to bless you with something big, He will often begin to clear away the fog and give you a renewed sense of purpose, direction, and clarity. You will begin to see your life with new eyes, understanding your role in His grand plan in a way you never have before. This renewed sense of purpose often comes when we are at our lowest, when we feel that we have exhausted all of our own resources and we are desperate for direction. God has a way of showing us that when we are weak, He is strong, and it is in our moments of vulnerability that He can give us the clarity we need. The Bible reminds us that the plans of the Lord stand firm forever, the purposes of His heart through all generations. Psalm 33:1. This assurance brings comfort because in the midst of uncertainty, God's purposes for our lives are always steadfast and unchanging. When God is about to give us something big, He will begin to reveal His plans and bring us into alignment with His will. There are moments in our lives when we can be so overwhelmed by the business of the world, by the demands of our job, our family, or our responsibilities, that we lose sight of the bigger picture. We become so focused on the details of our daily lives that we forget to take a step back and ask ourselves, what is God calling me to do? However, when God is about to move in a powerful way in our lives, He was the chief. He will often interrupt our routine with a sudden shift in perspective. We begin to see things differently. The things that once felt meaningless now have significance. The things that once seemed confusing now make perfect sense. We begin to understand that our lives are of something far greater than just our personal ambitions or desires. Think about the example of the Apostle Paul, who once persecuted Christians with zealous fervor, but later became one of the most influential apostles in the early church. Before his encounter with Jesus on the road to Damascus, Paul's purpose was driven by his own understanding of righteousness, which led him to persecute those who followed Jesus. But after his dramatic encounter with Christ, his eyes were opened, and his purpose was completely transformed. Paul was given new clarity about his calling, and he began to see the world through the lens of the gospel. His whole life's mission was redirected towards spreading the message of Christ, which was the chief. The transformation in Paul's life is a powerful reminder that when God is about to give us something big, He will first give us clarity and a renewed sense of purpose, even if it means changing everything we once thought we knew. This renewed sense of purpose and clarity does not always come instantly. For some of us, it is a gradual process where God works behind the scenes, shaping our hearts and minds. It can come in the form of a whisper, a subtle nudge, or a thought that just won't go away. In other cases, it might be a powerful and sudden revelation that shifts everything. But no matter how it comes, this sense of clarity is always accompanied by peace. When God reveals His purpose for our lives, there is an inner peace that follows, even in the midst of uncertainty. This peace, this is not the absence of challenges, but the assurance that we are walking in the right direction according to God's will. During this time of renewed purpose, there will often be a heightened sense of confidence and boldness. We will begin to see ourselves as God sees us, as part of His plan, equipped and called to fulfill the tasks He has set before us. This new clarity will empower us to take steps of faith that we would have once been too afraid to take. For instance, when Moses called to lead the Israelites out of Egypt, he initially doubted his ability to do so. But after God revealed His purpose for Moses' life and gave him a clearer understanding of his role, Moses went from being a reluctant leader to boldly confronting Pharaoh and leading the Israelites to freedom. Similarly, when God gives us clarity about our purpose, He also gives us the courage to step into the calling He has placed on our lives. Another aspect of this renewed clarity is that we begin to understand how our unique experiences and gifts fit into God's larger plan. God was that chief, not waste any part of our journey. Every difficulty, every joy, every success, and every failure has shaped us in a way that is vital to fulfilling His purpose for us. When God opens our eyes to see our life's mission, we start to understand how our past experiences have prepared us for what He is calling us to do. Which was the chief? It is as if the puzzle pieces of our life finally come together and we see the bigger picture. For many, this clarity also brings a greater sense of peace about the future. While the unknowns of life can often cause anxiety and fear, which was the chief? When God is about to give you something big, He removes the uncertainty and replaces it with trust. We no longer need to control an outcome or worry about every decision because we know that God is guiding us. We may not know exactly how everything will unfold, but we can rest in the assurance that He holds the future and that He will direct our steps. Ultimately, this renewed sense of purpose and clarity gives us a fresh perspective on life, allowing us to live with greater intention and focus. We no longer wander aimlessly through life, but move forward with purpose, knowing that every step we take is aligned with God's will for our lives. This clarity propels us into action as we begin to live out the plans and dreams that God has placed in our hearts. As we step into our calling, we become more effective in fulfilling the work that God has prepared for us. Our lives take on new meaning, and we experience the deep joy that comes from knowing we are exactly where God wants us to be. When God is about to give you something big, one of the signs you may encounter is a period of unusual challenges or opposition. It's a strange paradox. You might think that when something big is coming your way, the path would be smooth, the doors would be wide open, and the road would be clear. But in reality, often when God is preparing to bless you with something significant, opposition and challenges can arise that seem to stand in your way. These obstacles can sometimes cause doubt, frustration, and confusion. However, was the chief, it's essential to understand that these challenges are not signs of God's absence, but often indications that something powerful is on the horizon. Throughout Scripture, we see that many of God's greeters faced intense opposition before stepping into their calling. Consider the story of the Israelites as they journeyed toward the Promised Land. After leaving Egypt, they faced a multitude of challenges: hunger, thirst, the threat of enemies, and even their own fear and doubt. Despite these challenges, God was guiding them every step of the way. He had promised them a land flowing with milk and honey, but before they could receive that blessing, they had to overcome their doubts, their fears, and the many obstacles in their path. The opposition they faced was not meant to stop them, but to strengthen their faith and prepare them for the great future God had promised them. Similarly, consider the story of Nehemiah, who faced opposition when he set out to rebuild the walls of Jerusalem. Despite his passion and vision for restoring the city, he was met with mockery, ridicule, and even threats from those who did not want to see Jerusalem restored. Nehemiah's opponents tried to discourage him at every turn, yet Nehemiah persisted. He knew that the work he was doing was not just for his own benefit, but for God's glory and the good of his people. The challenges and opposition Nehemiah faced were not signs that he was on the wrong path. In fact, they were proof that God was moving in a mighty way. God was using those obstacles to refine Nehemiah's character, build his resilience, and strengthen his faith. This pattern holds true in our lives as well. When God is about to give you something big, watch was the chief. Opposition often arises as a test of your faith and determination. It's easy to think that when things get tough, God has somehow abandoned you. But the truth is that God allows challenges to come into our lives as part of his refining process. Just as gold must be refined by fire, our faith, ours, must be tested through adversity. These challenges are not meant to break us, but to strengthen us. Was the chief. They are God's way of preparing us to handle the blessings that he is about to pour into our lives. These challenges might come in many forms: financial struggles, relational difficulties, health issues, or even spiritual battles. You might feel that every step you take toward your goal is met with resistance. These times of opposition can be discouraging, but they are also moments of growth. In the face of opposition, you are forced to rely more fully on God's strength, his wisdom, and his guidance, which is the chief. It's in these moments that you learn to trust God more deeply, knowing that he is with you even in the midst of the storm. We see this clearly in the life of the Apostle Paul. After his dramatic conversion, Paul set out to spread the gospel, but everywhere he went, he faced intense opposition. He was beaten, imprisoned, and threatened with death. Despite all these hardships, Paul never wavered in his faith, which was the chief. He understood that the opposition he faced was not a sign that God had abandoned him, but rather a sign that he was walking in God's will. In 2 Corinthians 12:10, Paul writes, "For when I am weak, then I am strong." Paul knew that the challenges he faced only served to make him more dependent on God's grace, and through that grace, he was able to accomplish great things for God's kingdom. Similarly, opposition comes from those around us. It's possible that friends, family, or colleagues may not understand the dreams or plans that God has placed in your heart. They might criticize, discourage, or doubt your ability to succeed. This can be one of the most painful forms of opposition because it comes from people you care about. But even in these situations, it's important to remember that God has called you, not them. You must learn to follow his voice and trust that he will give you the strength to overcome any opposition, whether it comes from within or from those around you. In these times of opposition, it's also crucial to remember that God has a plan that is far greater than the challenges you are facing. The Bible promises us in Romans 8:28 that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. The opposition you face today is part of God's divine plan, and he will use it for your good. You may not understand it in the moment, but as you look back, you will see how God used those challenges to shape you, build your character, and prepare you for the bigger things he has in store for you. Another thing to keep in mind is that opposition can be a sign that you are on the right path. The enemy doesn't waste his time attacking those who are not a threat to his kingdom. If you are encountering resistance, it might be because you are stepping into something that will have a significant impact for God's glory. When you are walking in God's will and following his plan, the enemy will try to derail you. But take heart. God has already overcome the world, and he as the chief, he has given you the authority to overcome the enemy as well. During these times of opposition, you must stay focused on the bigger picture. Remember that the challenges you face are temporary, but the work God is doing in you is eternal. Keep your eyes fixed on the prize, knowing that the opposition is not the end of your story, but rather the refining process that prepares you for what lies ahead. Trust that God is with you every step of the way, and He will equip you with everything you need to overcome the obstacles in your path. As you press forward in faith, you as the chief, you will find that the very opposition that sought to stop you will be used by God to propel you toward the blessings He has prepared for you. When God is about to give you something big, one of the most powerful signs you will experience is a deepened spiritual hunger and a heightened desire for His presence. It may seem paradoxical at first, but before God releases a major blessing or breakthrough in your life, He often stirs within you an increased longing for more of Him. It's as if your heart becomes more attuned to His voice. Your spirit becomes more sensitive to His leading, and you find yourself yearning for a closer connection with the Creator. This longing is not simply a desire for material things or external success, but a deeper craving for spiritual growth and intimacy with God. As humans, we often fill our lives with distractions and pursuits that can cause us to drift away from the Lord. Which with the chief, it's easy to become consumed with the business of life, the demands of work, relationships, and responsibilities, and lose sight of the most important thing, our relationship with God. But when God is preparing something significant for you, He begins to work within your heart, drawing you back to Himself. This deeper desire for God often comes in the form of a renewed passion for prayer, a thirst for the Word, and a longing to spend more time in worship and fellowship with believers. You may find yourself waking up early in the morning to pray, or you may experience a deep desire to study the Scriptures with greater intensity. This hunger is not something you can manufacture on your own. It is the work of the Holy Spirit awakening you to the deeper things of God. This spiritual hunger is similar to the way a physical appetite works. When you are truly hungry, you begin to crave nourishment. You may even become restless as your body desperately seeks food. In the same way, when God is about to give you something big, your soul becomes hungry for spiritual nourishment. You begin to desire a deeper understanding of God's will, a greater awareness of His presence, and a more intimate relationship with Him. This hunger might begin to manifest itself in small ways, perhaps a growing desire to attend church more regularly or a desire to serve others. But over time, this desire intensifies, and you realize that the thing your heart craves most is not success, recognition, or material wealth, but the presence of God Himself. This deepened hunger for God is often a sign that God is preparing you for something far beyond what you could imagine. It's a signal that you are being spiritually prepared to handle the blessings He is about to pour into your life. Before God releases His blessings, He first prepares our hearts to receive them. This preparation often comes through a deepened spiritual hunger that causes us to focus on Him and His will rather than our own desires. In Matthew 5:6, Jesus said, "Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled." This promise is not just about a future reward, it's about a present transformation that occurs when we seek God with all of our hearts. As we seek Him, He fills us with His presence, His peace, and His power. The deepened hunger for God also acts as a filter for our lives. When God is preparing to give us something big, He often uses this spiritual hunger to refine our desires and priorities. We begin to see the things that once seemed important, success, recognition, material possessions, as less significant in comparison to the eternal rewards found in Christ. This shift in perspective is essential for receiving the blessings God has for us, because when our hearts are aligned with His will, we are ready to handle the weight of His blessings without being consumed by them. The more we hunger for God, the more we are able to distinguish between what is truly valuable and what is temporary. This helps us to remain focused on the things that matter most and to keep our hearts set on the things of heaven. This deepened desire for God is also a sign of spiritual maturity. When God is about to give you something big, He is preparing you not only for the blessing itself, but for the responsibility that comes with it. Spiritual maturity is the ability to recognize that everything we receive from God is not just for our benefit, but is meant to be used for His glory and the good of others. A deepened spiritual hunger compels us to seek God's will above our own, to trust Him in every circumstance, and to rely on His strength rather than our own abilities. This maturity is what enables us to handle the challenges and opposition that come with God's blessings and to use those blessings for His kingdom purposes. This hunger is not always easy to explain, especially when the world around you may seem satisfied with worldly pursuits. At times, you may feel like a stranger in your own environment as your longing for God sets you apart from those who are focused on the temporary things of life. But this longing for God is a sign of His work in your life, and it is often during these seasons of spiritual hunger that God does some of His deepest work within us. The more we long for God, the more He reveals Himself to us, and the more He shapes our hearts to be like His. Another aspect of this spiritual hunger is the way it shifts our focus from the things of this world to the eternal promises of God. As we grow in our desire for God, we begin to see the world through His eyes. We begin to care more about the things that matter to God: justice, mercy, love, and the advancement of His kingdom, than of our own personal ambitions or desires. This is a crucial part of God's preparation for something big in your life. If your heart is focused solely on temporary things, you might not be able to handle the fullness of what God has in store. But when your heart is centered on God and His will, you are better equipped to receive and steward His blessings in a way that brings Him glory. This hunger for God is not just about what we can receive from Him. It's also about the relationship itself. It's about a deeper desire to know Him, to experience His love, and to be transformed by His presence. This is the heart of true spiritual growth, a longing for God, not just for what He can give, but for who He is. As you draw closer to Him, you will find that your desires begin to align with His, and you become more attuned to His voice, His direction, and His timing. It is in this place of intimacy with God that He begins to reveal the plans He has for you, and you will find that your life is not only filled with His presence, but also with His purpose. In conclusion, when God is about to give you something big, He will stir within you a deepened spiritual hunger and desire for His presence. This hunger will lead you to seek Him more earnestly, to prioritize your relationship with Him, and to trust Him more fully. As you pursue God with all your heart, you will find that He begins to prepare you for the blessings He has in store, and your life will be marked by a deeper intimacy with Him and a greater sense of purpose. When God is about to give you something big, the signs may not always be immediately recognizable, but as you pay attention to His movement in your life, you will begin to see the markers of His preparation. From a deepened sense of purpose and clarity to unusual challenges and opposition, each sign is part of a greater process where God is shaping you, refining you, and positioning you for the blessings that lie ahead. The spiritual hunger that emerges during these times is not just about a desire for what God can give you, but about drawing closer to Him, understanding His will, and preparing your heart to receive His abundance with gratitude and humility. As you face these signs, remember that God's timing is perfect, and He is never in a hurry. He works in seasons, and every season of difficulty, waiting, or challenge is part of His divine plan to prepare you for something extraordinary. It's not about the ease of the journey, but about the transformation that happens within you. Just like the heroes of faith before us, God uses these moments to deepen your trust, increase your strength, and ready your heart for the immense blessings He desires to pour into your life. Through these signs, God is preparing you not just to receive a blessing, but to walk in His calling with greater faith, clarity, and purpose, bringing glory to His name in all you do.